going to read from my novel, The Water Cure, which is coming out in September. I just need to say a couple of things about it. One is the main character is, in fact, a romance novelist. And it's written in sections that do not follow sequentially, and these have just been lifted from the text itself. And I'll just start. This is a story I used to tell my daughter. There was a modest, rather inconspicuous shop on the corner. It was the only shop at the intersection. It was the only occupied corner. The other corners were vacant lots, one full of weeds, one full of piles of cardboard, and in the last, one old man sat on a stump. The old man wore a dusty red jacket and paid no particular attention to anyone and has no particular significance to this story. On the little shop was a sign that read, "Words." The little girl, the subject of this story, looked at the sign and wondered to herself whether she was reading the word words or merely recognizing it. She imagined that there must be a distinction to be made between the two, but what? She walked inside and the bell on the door announced her. She walked to the counter and addressed the tall woman standing behind it. "Is this a bookstore?" the little girl asked. "It is not." The woman put her hands to her head as if to adjust her hairdo. The little girl looked around, and in fact she saw no books. In double fact, she saw nothing but walls and a door set into the back of one, and the windows into the front, and empty shelves behind the counter. "This is a word shop," the woman said. "Do you have any money with you?" "I have $1. That's enough for a few words anyway. It depends on what you'd like to say. Some are rather expensive. I don't have any that are free." The little girl was intrigued. She wanted to know what the words would look like, whether they would come in a paper sack or wrapped in a box. "What should I buy?" she asked. "That, of course, depends on what you'd like to say," the woman said, standing even taller. "But if I could tell you what I wanted to say, then I'd already have the words I need. Be that as it may. Still, you can never have too many words. Make up your mind, little girl." "Excuse me, but do you have a list or catalog of some kind?" the little girl asked. "Of course. What kind of shop would this be if I didn't have a catalog?" And the woman bent down behind the counter and came back with a big red book. And on the cover read, "Dictionary." "There, that's most of them anyway." Then the little girl noticed a pile of small boxes on the counter stacked neatly as a pyramid. "What are those?" "We call those grab boxes. There are 4 words in each one. There is some repetition, but only some. But the fun is you never know what you're going to get." "And how much are they?" 50 cents a box." "I'll take one," the little girl said, and she gave the woman her $1 and received her 50-cent change. The woman handed her the box, and it felt so terribly light. "It's so light," she said. "Words are like feathers," the woman told her, "only cleaner." She sighed as she peered out the front window. The little girl took her new box of words out the door and into the sunshine. She couldn't wait to get home, so she tore into it immediately and found nothing. She looked all around, feeling lost, hollow. She was terribly and mightily and profoundly disappointed, and she marched back into the shop and said, "This box is empty." "Those are a fine 4 words," the woman said, smiling quite broadly. "You got quite lucky with that box." The astonished little girl stared helplessly for a moment. "There's nothing in my box," she said. "Not now," the woman said. "You just now used them. Would you like another grab box? You have 50 cents. "Yes, I would." And the little girl handed over her 50 cents and marched out just as she had before. And just ashamed, she tore into her box. Outraged, she screamed, "This one is too." She slapped her hand over her mouth, realizing that again she had let her 4 words go without so much as a thought. These pages are my undertaking. I am guilty not because of my actions, to which I freely admit, but for my admission, confession, that I executed these actions with not only deliberation and premeditation, but with zeal and paroxysm and purpose, and above all else, purpose, that I clearly articulate without apology or qualification, and so I find myself merely a sign, a clear sign, and like any sign, I am indifferent to the nature of that thing I designate, or, for lack of a better term, signify, while scratching at the dried blood beneath my nails, my voice rough and hoarse from disuse, for no matter how articulate my confession, it takes few words to utter it. The truth always requiring fewer words and generally smaller words than lies and half-truths, and they are never called half-lies. And this is instructive, the way so many things are instructive, and it all comes back to that indifference to the marked thing, the way nouns and names behave badly and play loose with meaning, the way language resists the tightening of screws, the way the sketching of schema, resist the sketching of schema, and the way the angle of incidence complements the angle of reflection. The whole mess of language yearning for a decent visual metaphor to connect it with the world toward which it is so indifferent. The answer to your question is shorter than the lie. Did you? I did. If I may, I will offer up again the metaphysical distinction between fact and value. At the base of the understanding of this distinction is the perception that values in some way come from individuals and cannot exist in the world, at least not in the world of frogs, car batteries, and coins. If they did, they would be like rocks, guitar strings, and orthodontic devices and would not be values at all. So I raised the question of whether it is possible for a statement to be considered a fact, since in fact it is issued by an individual. And compound this with our need to establish a statement as valid before we will consider it as possibly a fact, itself an evaluative move, and you can see my problem. Well, one of my problems, as my biggest problem, is that I think like this. About the simplest things, but nothing is really simple, is it? The whole fact-value thing was my way of arguing that my wife's claim that my giving up drinking would be good for me was not a fact, but a value judgment. Then I added, for effect and for something else, though I don't know quite what, that my desire to drink as an unspoken thing in the world, as an animal sensation, was in fact, and not a statement of value, and since the sensation did not depend on an individual for its derivation, then my desire for drink was more real than her assertion that stopping would be beneficial. She replied, but your desire has now been articulated and so has become a value statement. To which I replied, shut up. Man X is identical with man Y. Man X equals man Y. If man X has properties P, P1, P2 to Pn, then man Y has properties P, P1, P2 to Pn. Still, how is this contingent statement of identity possible? Is man X man Y, and if so, why is there a man Y at all? With my vengeance eyes burning the horizon for man X, will man Y do, and will he satisfy my desire? And am I correct not only in my identification of man Y as man X, but also in my belief that there is a man X at all? In other words, or at least my words, I am questioning the notion that a thing is necessarily self-identical. The question is, what kind of question is this? What kind of assertion is this? The things we think when we think to kill. Killing X equals killing Y. But is this lowly Y a member of a set such that one of the attributes is that Y is not X? And is there a class of such members Y such that if Y is not identical to all members of that set which shares no attributes with X, then there might exist some Y that is in fact not a member of that set? The man I torture is not me, but he is a member of that set of individuals that are capable of a crime of which I am incapable. But is he, by virtue of his unique guilt, not a member of that set with which he shares that all-important attribute of sharing no attributes with me? When I kill him, will I be diminishing the number of the members of that set of individuals capable of killing a child, such as my daughter, or will I be extinguishing the only member of a set that has only one member and is defined as belonging to that set by its identity, namely the attribute that he is of that set alone? Fuck it, just kill the motherfucker. And she yielded to him. Though she didn't want to, his eyes were like fire, and she felt what little resistance she had left, melting like the snow on the hood of a minivan after a drive to the soccer field. She pulled her face to his iron chest and breathed his delicious breath over her. She couldn't help herself. She reached up and grabbed his hair and pulled his face up to her face up to his, and opened her mouth for his inquisitive tongue. He ripped off her blouse, buttons be damned, as they skittered across the kitchen floor, and caressed her left breast. Brushing her nipple with his calloused thumb, he smelled of wood and gun oil and transmission fluid. She sucked in the air around him as her mouth found her neck. Soon they were both naked and she on the counter. She looked down at his massive manhood, searching for a den, and she supplied it. Taking him slowly while she let out a wail that she hoped the neighbors couldn't hear, but damned them, just like the buttons, damn them, let them all hear. Thank you. That's it. I asked for that one.